When the season began, the Kings didn't look like a contender. They weren't collapsing, but they weren't convincing either. Here is the additional problem. The Kings' star core is aging. Anže Kopitar is 38 and playing his final season. Drew Doughty is deep into his 30s, and a large part of the lineup is on a similar timeline. As the months passed, the drift became measurable. By February, the offense ranked near the bottom of the league. The power play struggled. The Kings had played more overtime games than almost anyone, collecting points without ever building separation. They hovered around the playoff line without controlling their position. This wasn't momentum, it felt like erosion. That's the context in which Ken Holland made his move. Artemi Panarin, 34 years old, but still producing at a point-per-game pace, arrived with a 2-year extension. Not a rental, a commitment. The goal was obvious: fix the offense. Panarin brings control, patience, and elite puck possession. He raises the ceiling of any line he plays on. But here is what the trade didn't solve. The center situation was already fragile. Kopitar could still carry the top line this season, but beyond him, the structure was thin. Quinton Byfield has talent, but remains inconsistent, sometimes even shifting to the wing. The rest of the central depth doesn't resemble a contender's spine. Alex Stokoe hasn't made the jump. At times, winger Alex Laferriere has had to play center in the top 6, which again is not a contender solution. Panarin brings creativity. He doesn't change the architecture down the middle. Then the margin narrowed even further. Kevin Fiala suffered a season-ending leg fracture at the Olympics. Now that removed 18 goals and the team's second leading scorer from the lineup. Panarin was supposed to amplify a functional top 6. Instead, he's being asked to replace production that just disappeared. This changes the math. The original calculation assumed overlap, Kopitar still driving the first line, Fiala providing scoring, Panarin elevating the whole structure. Now the overlap is compromised, and the center issue becomes unavoidable. You still have to answer the same structural question: who drives play once Kopitar is gone? Ideally, Byfield makes a major leap in the next season or two, but the Panarin move was made now, while Kopitar is still here. The overlap is the opportunity, and it's limited. With Fiala out for the season, management has to decide whether restoring the status quo is enough or whether the structure itself needs upgrading. Panarin is signed for 3 more potential playoff runs. If Los Angeles is serious about reopening its window, they need a legitimate top 6 center who can control matchups now, restore the top 6 viability this season, and anchor the next 2 years. The current situation comes with flexibility. Fiala's injury frees cap space, but cap space alone doesn't create structure. The Kings already spent valuable assets to acquire Panarin. The prospect pool is thinner, the draft capital lighter. To truly fix the center position, they would likely have to double down. Elite targets like Robert Thomas or Elias Pettersson would likely require assets Los Angeles no longer has. Vincent Trocheck, meanwhile, is rumored to have a preference for staying in the East. A player in the Nazem Kadri mold, experienced, under contract, playoff-tested and potentially more attainable, represents the type of move that actually stabilizes the spine. A legitimate anchor whose contract is just 1 year longer than what Panarin is signed for. Despite Kadri's age, that kind of acquisition will cost futures. What Holland does next will define the meaning of the Panarin trade. There are really only 2 coherent paths. One is restraint. Treat this season as a bridge, add marginal depth, protect what remains of the asset pool, and allow the roster to transition naturally from Kopitar's era into whatever comes next. The other is commitment. Turn the Panarin acquisition into a defined short-term push built around aging stars and a 3-year window. Maximize Kopitar's final season, pay to secure the middle of the ice, and stabilize the structure before it fully declines. What they cannot afford is hesitation, because once you attempt to reopen a fading window, partial measures only expose the cracks. The Kings declared intent when they traded for Panarin. Now Holland has to decide what that declaration actually meant. Was it a genuine attempt to revive a closing championship window, even at the cost of future flexibility? Or was it a way to keep the lights on a little longer, passing the torch from one retiring superstar to another, who is also moving toward the later stage of his career? The answer will determine whether the Panarin deal becomes the beginning of a final push or simply a symbolic handoff between eras. If this made sense to you, you're in the right place. This is iSense.